She thought she was insulting nobody. She had no idea she was talking to the woman who held her entire future in her hands. A packed dining room. A privileged heiress. A server pushed to her limit. In one moment of pure arrogance, the heiress was about to make a mistake that would cost her everything. She saw a clumsy employee. She was actually addressing Isabel Reed, the legendary venture capitalist, deciding whether to salvage this failing establishment or let it crumble. The synthetic fabric of the server's apron was irritating. Isabel Reed, known in financial hubs from Hong Kong to London simply as I. Reed, the investor with a golden touch and fierce determination, was currently just Izzy, a new hire on a probationary shift at the Gilded Spoon, and Izzy was overheating, frustrated, and seriously questioning her decision to wear her bespoke, cashmere-lined loafers, which were now coated in a film of kitchen grease. This was her method. Before her firm, Reed Holdings, committed to a major acquisition, Isabel didn't just review the data. She immersed herself. She became a junior staffer, a prep cook, and a cleaner. She was convinced the true essence of a company wasn't in its balance sheets, but in its daily rhythm. And the rhythm of the Gilded Spoon was faltering, weak. The restaurant had a gorgeous facade. Housed in a prime downtown landmark, it featured vaulted ceilings, Art Deco fixtures, and a cocktail menu that was bleeding them dry. The proprietor, Robert Sterling, adored the prestige of haute cuisine, but had none of the operational grit to sustain it. He was on the verge of financial collapse, and Isabel was his final secret hope. Izzy, table 3 needs their wine, now. Isabel started. That was Louis, the lead server. A lean, tired man whose weary expression hinted at endless shifts and a fierce, if misguided, dedication to a failing enterprise. He was the sole reason the dining room hadn't descended into chaos. Got it, Isabel murmured, hefting a chilled carafe. The last 3 hours had been spent scrubbing glassware, deciphering the overly complex order system, and attempting to carry 4 plates at once. She was frankly awful at it. Her career was built on macro-level planning and data models. Juggling a board of expensive martinis was an entirely separate and far more daunting skill set. She walked toward table 3, a pair softly celebrating a promotion. She forced a smile, her customer service expression feeling fragile. More Chardonnay? Yes, thank you, the man replied warmly. Isabel poured. Her hand, usually rock steady when authorizing 8-figure transfers, shook just slightly. A single cold droplet landed on the tablecloth, dangerously close to the woman's purse. Oh, watch it, the woman murmured, moving her bag. I'm so sorry. It's my first shift, Isabel said, her face flushing. She, Isabel Reed, who had stood firm against corporate raiders and federal inquiries, was embarrassed by a drop of wine. It's quite all right, the man said. As Isabel walked away, Luce met her by the wait station. Breathe, Izzy, he said, not harshly. You're trying too hard. Don't stare at the bottle. Watch the room. Predict. You're not just pouring wine. You're providing a moment. He swiftly reset a place setting. You're clever. You'll learn. But we need to be quicker. Robert is having a meltdown tonight. Isabel glanced toward the entrance. Robert Sterling was anxiously circling. A portly man in a suit that didn't quite fit. He kept glancing at his luxury watch, a timepiece Isabel knew was worth more than the kitchen's monthly inventory. He was perspiring, mopping his brow with a cloth. Why is he so nervous? Isabel asked, organizing menus. Nervous? Luz let out a short, bitter laugh. This is a slow night for a Wednesday. No, he's expecting the visitor. Some hotshot financier. He's had the private room polished to a mirror shine for days. He believes this Ms. Reed will waltz in, provide funding, and fix all his issues. Isabel worked to keep her expression blank. Ms. Reed, you say? Sounds impressive. To him, she's a guardian angel, Louis said, picking up a tray. To me, she's just another suit who'll likely convert this place into a generic grill. But hey, it's a paycheck. Now watch table 5. They seem ready for their bill. Isabel nodded, a knot forming in her stomach. She respected Louis. He was capable, had pride, and was understandably cynical. He was precisely the type of talent she valued. But Robert was a problem. He was obsessed with a phantom rescuer while the actual one was right here. Cleaning tables. Her covert operation was about more than finances. She was here to determine if the gilded spoon was worth saving. Was there a foundation of quality worth investing in? Or was she just buffing a lost cause? As she moved toward table 5, the main doors opened, letting in a wave of chilly evening air and a woman who appeared to be sculpted from pure, condescending frost. Her name was Cassandra Blackwell. She didn't enter a space. She occupied it. She was accompanied by 2 polished companions, a wiry woman named Sloane, who wore apathy as an accessory, and a man, Preston, with an entitled grin and a painfully bright designer jacket. The ambient noise of the restaurant didn't just quiet. It was swallowed by the void of her presence. Cassandra shrugged off her camel hair coat to reveal a slender frame wrapped in an emerald gown. Isabel identified from an upcoming designer collection. Not even in stores. Her platinum hair was secured in a severe bun that appeared to stretch her skin into a permanent sneer. Robert, her voice sliced through the space, crisp and sharp like shattering crystal. Don't say you've lost our reservation. Preston will be insufferable if he can't see the street. Robert Sterling, who had been nervously awaiting Ms. Reed, almost stumbled in his rush to welcome her. His fear of the investor was immediately replaced by his dread of the socialite. Miss Blackwell, Cassandra, never, he effused, dipping his head. Your usual booth is ready. It had better be, Cassandra stated, not granting him a glance. She was surveying the room, her eyes inventorying every patron, every outfit, critiquing and discarding. The atmosphere in here is more dismal than last time. Are you attempting to give your guests migraines, Robert? We're working on it, Miss Blackwell. New fixtures are being delivered. Being delivered? She languidly replied. Like your profitability, I assume. She drifted to the table, the premier spot, a deep leather booth with a window view. Isabel watched as she dragged a perfectly manicured finger across the surface. Grime, Robert, honestly. My apologies. We'll get you started with champagne, Preston interjected, slouching into the booth. The premium vintage. None of that mediocre brand you tried to serve us before. We require the La Rave 2006, Robert went pale. Isabel, from her pre-shift wine training, knew they possessed exactly 1 bottle of La Rave 2006, and its price was equivalent to a staff member's monthly rent. Of course, Preston. Right away, Robert stammered. And find us a server who actually knows what they're doing, Sloane added, not looking up from her phone. The previous one acted like he was trained in a school cafeteria. Robert nodded, his face a canvas of strained servility. He scurried off, spotting Louise. Louise, table 8. Manage them, please. It's Cassandra. Luce's expression hardened, but he agreed. And the new girl, Izzy. Keep her clear of them, Robert whispered urgently. She's unsteady. I can't have a disaster. Not tonight. Not with Ms. Reed arriving any moment. He hurried toward the private dining area to inspect it for the 10th time. Isabel felt a spike of irritation. Unsteady. She managed a multi-billion-dollar portfolio, but here she was just unsteady. Izzy, Louis said, his tone low. Go get the dessert menu for table 6. I'll handle the nobility. For the next half hour, Isabel tried to concentrate. She delivered the menus. She served espressos. She attempted to ignore the magnetic field of table 8, but it was futile. Cassandra's laugh was a shrill screech that seemed to ridicule the whole establishment. She and her group were the most disruptive, offensive people present. Yet everyone, including the employees, acted with a strange, cowed respect. Isabel was clearing a nearby table when she overheard them. "I mean, truly, look at this venue," Cassandra said, gesturing with her champagne flute. "It's pathetic. A relic. Robert is drowning it. Father insists he'll be insolvent by New Year's." "Then why are we here?" Preston asked, swirling his wine. "Because, sweetheart, it's the ideal spot to be observed before it flatlines. It's like visiting a terminally ill, wealthy relative. You must make an appearance," Cassandra smirked. "And," Sloane added, "it's the last place in the city that will still give us this much credit." They all chuckled. Isabel felt a chill of fury solidify in her gut. They weren't patrons. They were scavengers. She was gathering dishes from a different table when Lise, looking strained, approached her. "I need you to bring this amuse-bouche to table 8, he said, his voice tense. "What?" "But Robert said." "I don't care what Robert said. There's an issue in the kitchen. The chef is talking about leaving. And Robert is in his office, practically having a panic attack. You're the only available person. Just deliver the canapes. Don't speak. Don't linger. Just set it down and leave." "Understood." Isabel nodded, her heart suddenly racing. "Understood." She picked up the small porcelain plate, bearing delicate, truffle-crusted bites. She took a steadying breath. She was Reed. She could manage this. She approached the table. "Pardon me, a complimentary starter." Preston took one without a glance. Sloane ignored her. Cassandra, however, slowly raised her eyes, her stare moving from the plate up Isabel's arm, over the inexpensive uniform, and finally settling on her face. Cassandra's mouth twisted. Well, what do we have here?" she said, her voice laced with mockery. "Robert has truly dug deep, hasn't he?" Isabel froze, her hands still on the plate. I'm just—" "Quiet," Cassandra cut her off. "This is merely a critique. Look at her, Sloane. Those trousers, are those practical?" "They look functional," Sloane offered, unhelpfully. "Functional?" Cassandra repeated as if the word itself was distasteful. "Darling, functional is for people who have surrendered. This is the Gilded Spoon, not a food court. And your complexion, my God, it's so plain." Isabel stood motionless, a scalding wave of shame washing over her. It was one thing to be invisible. It was another to be publicly dissected. "That's not acceptable," Isabel said, her voice barely audible. This appeared to be the most hilarious thing Cassandra had ever heard. She let out a sharp, ugly laugh. "Not acceptable? Oh no. You are not acceptable. You don't fit here. Certain individuals," she said, leaning in conspiratorially, "are destined to frequent establishments like this. And others are destined to cater to us. You should really accept your role, Izzy." Isabel's grip tightened on the plate. She could feel the stares from nearby diners. She was a sideshow. "Please, enjoy the canape," Isabel managed, forcing herself to place the plate on the table. As she did, Preston, waving his hands animatedly during a story, bumped her elbow. It wasn't forceful, but it was enough. Isabel stumbled. The small plate clattered onto the table, and a tiny, delicate cup of saffron aioli tipped over. It landed with a soft, wet sound directly onto the front of Cassandra Blackwell's emerald designer gown, leaving a greasy, ugly smear. The restaurant, which had been buzzing, became utterly, completely silent. For 5 full seconds, no one moved. Cassandra looked down at the stain on her dress. She stared at it as if it were a fatal injury. Her face, which had been alive with cruel amusement, went utterly vacant. The silence stretched, becoming thin and poisonous. Then she slowly, deliberately, lifted her gaze to Isabel. "You," she whispered, her voice lethally quiet. "I am so sorry," Isabel stammered, reaching for a napkin. He knocked my arm. "Don't you dare!" Cassandra shrieked, recoiling as if Isabel were contaminated. The whisper vanished, replaced by a razor-edged fury. "Don't you dare touch me, you incompetent, clumsy fool." The whole room was now watching, conversations dead. "Preston, you hit her," Sloane said, her eyes wide. "I absolutely did not," Preston sputtered, already distancing himself. She flung it at her." "She flung it?" Cassandra's voice escalated to a hysterical pitch. "She attacked me." "No, I didn't." "It was an accident," Isabel insisted, her professional composure fracturing, leaving only a raw, defensive anger. She was accustomed to control. This public, degrading chaos was alien. "An accident? An accident?" Cassandra stood up so fast her chair shrieked against the hardwood. "This gown is haute couture. Straight from the Parisian runway. This is a $30,000 dress, you foolish girl. You couldn't afford the zipper on this dress if you worked here for a decade." Luis was suddenly there, guiding Isabel behind him. "Miss Blackwell, please." It was clearly an accident. "Let us cover the cleaning." "Cleaning?" Cassandra laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "This is aioli on virgin silk. It's destroyed. She destroyed it. I want her terminated, now." Robert Sterling came rushing from his office, his face the color of chalk. He had heard the scream. He saw the stain. He saw Cassandra. And he saw his final chance for salvation disappearing. "Cassandra, Miss Blackwell, what occurred?" He panted, tugging at his tie. "What occurred, Robert, is that you employed this cretin," Cassandra spat, pointing a finger at Isabel. "She intentionally destroyed my gown. I want her fired. I want her fired, and I want you to cover the cost." "I, of course, anything." Robert was wringing his hands, not even looking at Isabel. He was looking at the woman who could, with one social media post, annihilate what remained of his restaurant's reputation. "I didn't do it intentionally," Isabel said, her voice cold and trembling. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by an icy wrath. "Your companion jostled my arm. Are you accusing me of being dishonest?" Preston bristled. "I would never—" "She's calling you a liar," Cassandra cried. "She assaults me, and now she's defaming my friends." "Robert, are you going to act, or are you going to stand there?" "Act?" The word hung in the air. Robert turned to Isabel. His eyes were wild, pleading. They weren't the eyes of an employer. They were the eyes of a cornered beast. "Izzy," he began, his voice shaking. "Go to the back." "Just go." "No," Cassandra snapped. "Not the back. Out. I want to watch her exit that door. I want confirmation she's gone." Isabel stared at Robert. "Say something," she willed him. "Be a leader. Be a person. Defend your employee from a blatant, hysterical bully." Robert wouldn't meet her gaze. He was looking at the floor, at Cassandra's shoes, at the stain, anywhere but at her. "Miss Blackwell," he tried. "Don't Miss Blackwell me, Robert. You are this close." She held her thumb and forefinger a hair's breadth apart, to being ostracized. "You, this restaurant, your entire pathetic little existence. You want to save it? Fire her, now." The tension in the room was suffocating. Isabel could feel the empathy from the other diners, but it was a weak, passive sympathy. She could feel Luce's fury emanating from him. But he was powerless. He needed this job. They all did. And Robert, he was a fragile man, trapped by a predator. "Izzy," he said again, his voice breaking. He finally looked at her, his face a miserable picture of surrender. "I am so sorry, you have to leave. Please just clock out. I'll courier your final payment." He had done it. He had fired her. Isabel looked at him. She looked at the man who was secretly begging her for millions. The man who was now discarding her to placate a tyrant over a ruined dress and a socialite's fit. "You're firing me," Isabel said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a data point confirmed. "I have no choice," he whispered, a frantic, desperate plea. "You always have a choice, Robert," Isabel said, her voice suddenly, frighteningly calm. Cassandra smirked, folding her arms. "That's right. He chose. He chose to preserve his restaurant from garbage like you. Now leave Shu. Your time here is done." She made a little flicking motion with her fingers. It was that gesture, that dismissive, dehumanizing flick. That was the moment the Izzy persona dissolved. Isabel Reed, the CEO, the financier, the titan, emerged. "Robert," Isabel said. Her voice was no longer the flustered, slightly hesitant tone of Izzy. It was the voice from her boardroom, a low, resonant alto that cut through the atmosphere and demanded absolute, immediate attention. Robert, who was turning to apologize again to Cassandra, froze. He turned back, his eyes wide. Cassandra's smirk wavered. "Robert, check your phone," Isabel said. "What?" he stammered. "Your mobile. The one in your jacket." "Check it," confused. Terrified, Robert fumbled for his phone. He pulled it out, staring at it blankly. "Why?" "Because," Isabel said, reaching into her own cheap synthetic pocket and retrieving a slim, modern black smartphone. "I'm calling you right now." She tapped her screen. A moment later, Robert's phone vibrated in his unsteady hand. He looked down at the screen. The caller ID displayed, "I read." Robert Sterling's reality shifted. He stared at the screen. "I read." The name glowed, pulsing with the incoming call. It was the name that had been his sole focus for 2 months. The name he linked with rescue, with stability, with not having to face his investors. He looked at the phone, then his gaze, slow and filled with a dawning, horrific realization, lifted from the screen to the face of the server. To Izzy, the woman before him was not the awkward, nervous trainee. The woman before him stood with perfect, rigid posture. Her chin was raised. Her eyes, which he had thought were ordinary, were now a piercing shade of steel gray he hadn't perceived before. They were fixed on him. They weren't enraged. They weren't hurt. They were infinitely more terrifying. They were analytical. "Hello, Robert," Isabel said, her own phone still held lightly in her hand. "You should probably take that. It's important." The phone continued to buzz. The sound was overwhelming in the quiet restaurant. Robert couldn't form a sentence. His mind was failing to connect two utterly incompatible truths. The disposable server in the low-cost uniform and the Reed, who commanded a $12 billion private investment firm. Cassandra, who had been savoring her win, now looked completely lost. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice losing its edge, replaced by confusion. "What kind of idiotic game is this? Robert, who is she?" Robert didn't answer. He was still staring at Isabel, his mouth agape. She's, Isabel sighed, tapped her screen to end the call, and slid her phone back into her apron. "He's in shock," Isabel said, addressing the room as if it were an annual shareholder meeting. "Let me clarify, Robert. You can stop waiting. Reed is here. She's been here for 4 hours. She reached behind her back and with one sharp tug undid her apron. She folded it once, neatly, and set it on a nearby empty table. "My name," she said, her voice clear and carrying to every corner, "Isabel Reed. I am the founder and CEO of Reed Holdings, and I am, or more accurately was, the investor you've been anticipating." If the silence before was tense, this was an abyss. Luce's jaw went slack. The kitchen team, who had crept out to witness the drama, stood frozen. Cassandra Blackwell's impeccably made-up face shifted from confused to scarlet, to a pale, sickly white. The blood drained from her features so rapidly she resembled a wax figure. That's not possible," Cassandra stammered. You're a waitress." "I was," Isabel corrected her. "I was a server to fund my undergraduate degree at Stanford. I was a barista to pay for my doctorate at Wharton. And I was Izzy, your server tonight, to perform my final stage of due diligence on this restaurant, to judge if it was a viable investment." She turned her cool gaze back to Robert, who looked like he might collapse. "You see, Robert, I don't just invest in businesses. I invest in character. I needed to witness how you led your team, how your staff operated under duress, what the true heart of the Gilded Spoon actually was." She gestured to Luis. "Your head server, Luce, is a diamond. He's a born manager, perceptive, capable, and unwaveringly loyal even when you're clearly working him to exhaustion. Your kitchen crew," she nodded to the chefs, "is producing 5-star cuisine with 2-star tools. Your team, Robert, is exceptional. They are the true value." Then her gaze hardened and she turned back to him. "But you, Robert, you are a disastrous weakness." "Now wait," Robert began, finding his voice, a thin, grasping thing. "No, you wait," Isabel snapped, raising a hand. The authority in the gesture was so absolute, he stopped instantly. "I observed you tonight. You weren't leading. You were cowering. You were terrified. You were hoping for a magical wire transfer to fix issues that are rooted in your own failure of leadership." And then her voice dropped. "This juvenile," she gestured to Cassandra, "threw a fit. And you were faced with a decision." She took a step closer to him. "You could have stood up for your employee against an aggressive, insulting patron. You could have shown a fragment of integrity. You could have controlled the circumstance. But you didn't. You chose to degrade and dismiss a woman you believed was poor and powerless, just to satisfy a brute who you thought had clout." She was going to destroy me," Robert pleaded. "She is destroying you," Isabel countered. "She and her clique openly boasted about accruing a massive bill. They have no plan to settle it. They ridiculed your restaurant. They ridiculed you. And in return, you groveled. You traded your principles for the chance that she might not post a negative comment online." Isabel turned her full attention to Cassandra. The socialite, for the first time in her life, appeared diminished. "And you?" Isabel said. Cassandra flinched as if physically struck. She was now the one under scrutiny, and she was discovering, to her horror, that she hated it. "Me," she whispered. "You," Isabel affirmed, her voice a steel blade. "You sat here in your $30,000 dress, and you mocked my attire, my complexion, my place in life. You informed me I was born to serve." Isabel took a step toward table 8. Preston and Sloane looked like they wished to vanish into the booth. "Let's discuss what we're born into, shall we? You were born Cassandra Blackwell, a name that 3 generations ago signified something. It meant enterprise, authority, foresight. Now," Isabel scoffed, a sound of pure disdain, "it just signifies you, a pampered, vicious, completely irrelevant leech living off a heritage you contributed nothing to create." You can't speak to me that way," Cassandra managed. But her voice held no strength. It was a thin, frightened whine. "Do you know who my family is?" It was the question Isabel had been anticipating. "Yes, I do," Isabel said, a predatory calm settling over her. "I know all about your family. I know about Alistair Blackwell and his precarious shipping conglomerate. I know about the 2 enormous high-risk loans he secured from Crown and Globe Financial to bankroll his failed port expansion." Cassandra's face went from pale to ghostly. How could you know that?" "I know that," Isabel said, "because as of 3 p.m. yesterday, Reed Holdings finalized its purchase of Crown and Globe Financial. Which means, Cassandra, I am your family's creditor. I hold their debt. I own the notes that are preventing him from total, absolute ruin. A small, choked sound escaped Cassandra's throat. Sloane visibly gasped and covered her mouth. So when you ask me if I know who your family is, Isabel continued, leaning in slightly, the answer is yes. He's my newest and most distressed borrower, and I can assure you his position is far more unstable than mine. Isabel stood back up to her full height. You came here tonight and demanded the $500 Le Rave champagne. You insulted the team. You intentionally and with malice attempted to get a working woman fired during an economic crisis. All over an accident your friend caused. You did it because it made you feel powerful. Now this is real power. It's not being cruel to people you deem beneath you. It's having the capacity to dismantle a person's entire world and choosing not to. She paused, letting the words resonate. At least, she added, most of the time. She turned back to Robert, who was now sagging against a decorative column, his face ashen. The deal, Isabel said, is terminated. No, Robert cried, stumbling forward. Please, Isabel, Ms. Reed, please. It was an error. A dreadful error. I'll do anything. I'll ban them, he said, pointing a shaking finger at Cassandra. You don't comprehend, do you, Robert? Isabel said, her voice filled with a sudden weariness. This isn't about them anymore. It's about you. You failed the evaluation. You revealed your character. You're a feeble leader, and you've constructed a house of cards on the backs of good people. My firm does not invest in feeble leaders. Please, he begged. Tears were now streaming down his face. My home, my children's college fund. I'll be ruined. Everything is at stake. Isabel looked at him, her expression unreadable. The entire restaurant was holding its breath. Luis was watching her, his face a blend of awe and fear. He knew his job and the jobs of all his co-workers were on that line. Isabel was silent for a long, agonizing minute. She looked at Robert, the whimpering, broken owner. She looked at Louise, the proud, drained server. She looked at the kitchen staff, their jackets stained with effort. She was running calculations. A cold, precise algorithm was processing in her mind. Variable 1, Robert is a liability. Variable 2, the staff is the asset. Variable 3, the brand is recoverable. Variable 4, the bully requires consequence. In conclusion, the framework must be rebuilt. All right, Isabel said finally. Robert looked up. A desperate, pathetic glimmer of hope in his eyes. The original arrangement is void, Isabel clarified. The one where I provide $3 million and you retain control. That deal is dead. If the Gilded Spoon is to continue, we're proceeding on my terms, and my terms are non-negotiable. Robert was nodding before she finished. Yes, anything. Whatever you wish, Ms. Reed, anything. Good, Isabel said. She walked to the center of the room, her presence now wholly dominating the space. She was no longer Izzy the server. She was Reed, and this was her domain. Term number 1, she announced, holding up a finger. Robert, you are removed as head of operations. Effective immediately, you are a silent partner. You will handle accounting and only accounting. You will have no interaction with staff, no power over scheduling, and you will never make an executive decision again. Understood? Yes, he whispered, wiping his face. Yes, understood. Term number 2. She turned to Luis, who looked as if he'd been hit by a thunderbolt. Luis, you're promoted. You are the new operating manager of the Gilded Spoon. You will report directly to me. Your salary is tripled, effective now. You will have total authority to hire, manage, and oversee the floor. Luce's mouth opened and closed. Me, Ms. Reed? I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, Isabel said, offering him the first small, genuine smile of the night. Just perform the role I've watched you execute without title or pay for the last 4 hours. You've deserved it. Term number 3. She looked at the kitchen staff and then at the other servers watching from the service area. My fund's initial capital will not go to new art or foolish lighting. It will go to you. All kitchen and service staff are receiving a 40% across-the-board wage increase. And we are closed on Sundays and Mondays. No more 70-hour weeks. This restaurant will no longer be built on the exhaustion of its people. A wave of audible gasps and whispered thanks moved through the staff. Louise actually put a hand on a chair to steady himself.